Okay, hi everybody. My name is Richard.lesperance. I go by the name of my man Richard. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. Today I have the pleasure to have Madelaine Weiss with me. Welcome, Madelaine, to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Richard.
It's my pleasure. So, who is Madelaine Weiss?
Oh, that is a very big question. I've been around for a long time, and I remember this concept that I have learned from a long time ago, that there's a core and there's a periphery. So though I and we may change a few things around the periphery, there's a core, and I'm guessing you're asking about the core. Is that right?
Yeah, who is Madelaine Weiss in her life, career, and who she is
Yeah.
uh, in the world?
I think I have always meant well and wanted to do well, particularly by others. And that took lots of different forms, some more appreciated by others than some other ones. Um, I tend to teach. So again, sometimes people pay me the big bucks for that. And sometimes people would rather that I just listen, and that's another way to serve. So service has become key to my life in one way or another. I studied, it's not really on my resume, but I studied Advaita Vedanta, pre-Hindu tradition, for close to 25 years. And service was a central part of that. And I always wonder, did I go there and stay there for 25 years because of service? Or was it that I went there and stayed there for 25 years that service has become as central as it is? I imagine it's a bit of both. But so,
So, professionally, what did you major in?
well, right out of high school, I went to the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Medical Technology. So my first job out of school was in a clinical chemistry laboratory. From there, I went on to work at the USDA Biological Control Lab. What I'm getting to here is that I was basically working with blood and bugs kinds of things. And for reasons we will probably get into, I really wanted a more direct hands-on with the people more than the bugs. So, yeah.
So, we'll be talking about mental health. I know you know a lot
Yeah.
about you know a lot about that. Do you think we're making progress in regards to mental health?
I think we're really challenged right now in regards to mental health. And that's not to say we're not making progress. I suppose you could consider it progress that we're paying as much attention to it as we are. At the same time, that it seems that people are really struggling, like something like 94% of people say they feel stressed in their work. 75% of working parents are, so focused on their children's mental health, which is not that great right now, that it's hard to even think about their work when they're at work. So when you say mental health, progress, yes and no. Depends on how you're defining that.
Yeah, I just what I meant that is it I guess I know there's more well to what I'm seeing, there's more awareness and we talk about
Yes, there
there's
is.
more people talk more about it. You know, they have shows and discussions and
Right.
conferences. So I think to me, like there's more progress in regards to that. So
I
that's why I was asking that question.
I 100% agree with you. You know, part of what I convey is that back in my day, way back when, hundreds of years ago, it seems like, parents, teachers, adults in general did not talk to their children about their feelings the way parents do today. So when I was 15 years old and my father died suddenly, I was kind of left inside my own heart and mind by myself. And I can give you all kinds of figures about why people, in general, humans, are really only living in stories that they don't realize that they're making up. It is the best we can do because the human mind can't process all the information there is. So at that time, suffering that trauma, I had a story going in my head that was not particularly healthy, mental healthy. And yet there I was until this day at the cemetery when I broke down with my mother about how all my fault I thought my father's death was. And she said to me, "No, honey, it wasn't you, it was work." So there I was going on for a really long time. It was years before I heard this other perspective on what went down there. So between that experience of a child being left to her own devices without parental wisdom and support, and also my adult clients saying to me all the time, um, you know, I teach them how to master their minds so they can have happier, healthier, prosperous, productive. And they say to me, "Why didn't somebody teach me this when I was 8 years old? Could have saved me a lot of pain along the way." So I wrote that. So this is a personal development book for kids and the adults who care about them. So that's my contribution to the mental health of children who will grow up to be adults who will be responsible for the mental health of others. And we each do what we can. So I did that.
What are the myths in regards to mental health?
What are the myths? Well, I had a really eye-opening experience when I started studying evolutionary psychology. And I read this book on evolutionary psychiatry. And what this book did is it took all the major mental illness syndromes like schizophrenia and depression and OCD, and there was a chapter on each. And what the point that they were making was that every single one of these illnesses was an evolutionary strategy that helped us to survive and to thrive run amok. In other words, it was too much of a good thing. And then right after that, I read another book called The Moral Animal by Robert Wright. And Wright talks about knobs and tunings. And he says that all of those kinds of things are the knobs of human nature that we all have. And we can get our hands on those knobs and turn it up and down to suit the situation that we are in our lives. So I would say that the singular most misguiding myth of mental health, to your question, is that it's a fixed thing and you either have it or you don't, and there's nothing you can do about it except medicate it. I think that which does help sometimes. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I think that we're all on these continuums and we don't realize how much we can move ourselves. So if you think about depression or you think about anxiety, the kinds of things a lot of people know about, know what that feels like, we can actually move. We can get our hands on the dials and regulate that more than we think we can. If we've done our best at that, obviously, and it's not working and it's persisting for a very long time and it's affecting our functioning, then we need medical care for that. But short of that, there are things that humans can do to tune ourselves like an instrument. We are an instrument for our use and the use of others during our time here on this planet, and we have to keep it tuned.
Do you think men have it harder than women, or women have it harder than men?
I think men are, well, I would like to ask you that. I'm going to say I think men are having a harder time than usual right now. What do you think? Because you're a man.
I
So.
think, yeah, I think for the most part, men would have, because there's the pressure, like the man holding the family, he has to be strong and
Yeah.
all that. So I think so, but maybe it's mixed, because there's so much, life could go in so many directions for either men or women. So when life happens, it's just a mental state at that point.
You know what you just described about men as providers is sort of like a plus and minus now, because while it's well known that there is that sense of providership that is important in the male psyche in general, more, and again, on a continuum, some more or less. Now, women have come into their own in a way that actually sort of threatens that. So the mental health of men, I believe is, and from what I've read, is suffering the impact of feeling less needed and less vital and less important because women have gotten to a place where they can earn their own incomes like never before, and what that means for men. So men have the age old pressures, but now there's this new thing that I think we haven't experienced before. So it's like a whole other challenge. And I do think our men are struggling a bit,
In some
understandably.
in some cultures, it might be taboo when we talk about mental health. What do you think about that?
Which culture are you thinking of?
There's no culture in particular, but I'm just asking, do you think it's worldwide, or certain parts, certain culture, maybe like they're not talking about it, or, sometimes there's a lot of shame when we talk about that. Well, not a lot of shame, but people feel like people are going to judge them.
Well, that was certainly the case here. And people are making efforts to destigmatize the diagnosis and treatment of mental health issues to make it more like physical health issues. As for the rest of the world, I can't really speak for the rest of the world, but this sense of mental well-being, goes back to Buddha, at least. So if I had to guess, I would guess that there's something in every culture about that sort of wellness, though they might call it something completely different. But like the spiritual wellness of certain cultures. So I just have a feeling, and again, I have no idea, but I have a feeling that there's something like that for all cultures.
Did you have to battle, like, in your journey, in your life journey? I'm sure you probably did, but had to deal with mental health, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I always thought as a clinician, I had to be very careful because, and you might have heard a little bit of this from me already today, but I was kind of anti-medication. And so I always wanted to be careful with my clients that when that really was indicated, that I wasn't steering them away from that because of my own personal bias. And of course, that's true for clinicians in general. We always have to watch ourselves that we're not imposing our own stuff on our clients. But for myself personally, which I think was your question, I somehow, well, I think I know how, and I'll tell you how, managed to sort of, I like to say, rearrange the furniture in my own head to steer myself out of whatever emotional hole or stuckness I may have felt that I was in. And the how is this idea of mastering the mind so you're more in charge of it than it is in charge of you. I remember somebody came in, well, it was my employer actually came into my office, and he would stop by just to see how things are going. And one day he said to me, "So, what are you doing to make yourself happy today?" And there was something about the question that kind of placed it squarely into my responsibility, like right on my plate, right in my lap, that this is all on you, babe. And I rose to that, and I hope other people do the same. I'll give you a case example. There's a woman, she's a bank vice president. And when I first met her, she was just miserable about everything, just miserable. Everybody and everything was not good enough. And she was just sort of pissy and angry all the time. And what she realized along the way, when she got to know her mind a little better, that what was going on in there is that there was one area of her life that was not the way she wanted it to be. And it was bleeding all over everything else, because everything else, I'm not even going to say it, I'm going to tell you how she said it. So one day she opened the session with, like, out of nowhere, um, you know, I was thinking, my life is 85% pretty darn good. And that other 15% is nothing I can't handle. And if you ask me what is mental health, I can read you a fancy definition. But if you ask me what is mental health, it's that. It's that feeling that your life is pretty okay. And whatever isn't is nothing you can't handle.
Social media now, we're in the era of social media. A lot
Mhm.
of people, it could be negative on the one hand, and it could be positive on the other hand. Sometimes when we see stuff, people compare themselves to what has been shown to them. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, that's so social media both connects and disconnects us. So like especially during COVID, wasn't it wonderful to be able to connect with people at a time of isolation? And the internet did that for us. Social media did that for us. But the way in which it is like on purpose addictive, the way in which it draws people in, it's almost cult-like in the way that it takes you away from your other relationships. And study after study after study is showing that these quality relationships are central to our mental health, central to our well-being. So it's a plus and a minus. And I think, again, it's the same concept that we master it So we're in charge of it instead of it in charge of us, so that we can think when something is actually more toxic than nourishing, so that we have the mastery to step in and to step back under our own will. Not that we are. In fact, I attended a lecture once where the speaker said something like, find something that you feel like you couldn't live without, like maybe coffee in the morning, for example. Find something, whatever that is, and do without it for a week or two. And the point of that was to show yourself that you're in charge, because that's what really makes us feel strong. That 15%, she said, nothing, that feeling of nothing I can't handle. Bring it on, whatever it is. It's nothing I can't handle, because I'm more in charge of my mind than my mind is in charge of me.
Sometimes some people like to hold everything in, and I was saying before, sometimes if they talk about if they're dealing with mental health, they could feel that people are gonna judge them. But they always say, well, not they always say, but there's a saying, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's okay not to be okay. So what would you say to those people?
Well, I have something I want to throw in there that, you know, you can't feel appreciated, you can't feel loved if there's no you there. In other words, if I'm holding everything about me in, and somebody seems to love me or like me, who is it that they're loving or liking? It's not me, because me isn't present in the relationship. So I think some amount of sharing your vulnerability is really important, because otherwise people don't know you. There is no you. However, I think that venting is overrated, and that we must be very, very careful. So people think talking is going to make things better, and it doesn't always do that, and it has the concern of making things worse. So for trauma, let's say, people used to think if there was a trauma in your life, you just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it till you like work it out. You get it out of your system, they would say. Now we know something different, which is that the more you go over it and over it and over it, the more you lock in the neural connections. So it gets stronger and it has more of a hold on you than if you weren't talking about it so much. So I'm realizing in our conversation, I'm saying a lot of yeah, but like everything. I would say in moderation, but I don't even really mean that. I mean everything with mindfulness, being on top of what's working, what's not, and choosing accordingly. Humans make 35,000 decisions every day, largely unconsciously. It's better to make more of those a little more conscious, so that you can bring your higher brain into making that decision, the smarter part of you. So,
We're living in a world like it's a really it's go 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 like family, work, all kinds of situation. Uh,
yeah,
there's a lot of gurus out there like go go go, and
yeah.
how important it is for self-care, like to have balance.
What was the last thing you said, Richard?
Self-care, balance.
Oh, balance, balance. Yeah.
Uh, well, mostly self-care for people to
Okay.
take care of themselves.
Yeah, it's 100% of primary importance. You know that when they say on the airplane, you have to put the mask on your own face first, because if you don't do that, you'll be like fainted or dead on the floor and no good to anybody. It's the same thing about self-care. Again, you, I, everybody, we're an instrument that we have to take care of. So, and if we don't function well, and then we're no good to anybody.
Sir, what will be your last words in regards to mental health for people who are dealing with mental health? What would you have to say?
Well, here's something I really like that is from when I was studying Advaita Vedanta. It's called Good Company. And good company is not just the people in your life, although it certainly is that. And it's really important to pick and choose to whatever extent we can who gets into our life in terms of their being more nourishing and not toxic for us. But it's not just the people, it's the books we read, it's the music that we listen to, it's the food that we eat. Everything that we're making decisions, we don't even know we're making decisions about. All those well-being related decisions that we make, if we bring them to be more conscious, we can pick and choose our good company. And the most important aspect is the thoughts in our head. We are keeping company with the thoughts in our head all day long, all night long, all the time. And people can have much more mastery over those. We can't prevent negative, the inner critic. We can't prevent that from coming, but we can surely get on top of how long we let it stay. And so mindfulness teaches let it come and let it go. Those things don't stay very long if we let them go. They only stay if we pick them up and chew on them like a dog with a bone. So the concept I leave you with is good company, and it's everything about your life that you choose to invite into your life or not, including and especially the thoughts in your head.
Where can people learn more about you and follow you?
Okay, so at my website, everything is there. MadelaineWeiss.com, MadelaineWeiss. And I don't know. So there's this for adults and there's this for kids, and they're all on the website. There are freebies on the website. There's a power breathing exercise that helps you to put your higher brain in charge. So there's a tab that says power breathe. That's a 30-second mindset reset. Everybody get it. It's free. It's easy. It's yours anytime, anywhere, for any reason. And I also offer free strategy sessions, and there's a tab for that too.
Thank you, Madelaine, for being here. It
Oh,
was
thank you,
nice.
Richard.
It was my pleasure. It was
Yeah,
nice. It was nice meeting you.
me
Uh,
too.
on that note, everybody, thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.